Empathy is celebrated today as the highest moral virtue, the sacred capacity to feel what others feel. We are told constantly to be more empathetic. But I am here to tell you that unregulated empathy is destroying strong men. It is a weakness, not a virtue. And the ancient Stoics knew this truth that modern psychology often obscures. The empathy trap is the emotional contagion that causes you to absorb the fear, the anger, the chaos, and the weakness of every person you encounter. When you allow your inner state to be dictated by the suffering or the hysteria of others, you are committing a profound act of philosophical self-betrayal. You are voluntarily surrendering the keys to your inner citadel. This excessive empathy is a direct conduit to burnout, anxiety, and eventual resentment. It makes you a prime target for manipulation and enables the very people you seek to help. You become an emotional sponge, always soaking up external negativity, until you are so heavy and saturated that you lose your own shape and capacity to act rationally. The Stoics were masters of practical virtue. They were deeply concerned with the welfare of humanity, but they approached it with logic, not porous feeling. They understood that if you lose your rational center, you lose your ability to help anyone, including yourself. In my years as an entrepreneur, I often confused emotional turbulence with deep caring. I felt I had to shoulder the anxiety of my team, the frustration of my clients, and the self-pity of my partners. I thought this was leadership. In reality, it was a profound lack of self-discipline. I became a wreck, plagued by chronic anxiety and reactive anger, because I was carrying the emotional baggage of every person in my orbit. My success was built on a foundation of sand, and the slightest external tremor would send me spiraling. The true breakthrough came when I realized that my value was not in feeling their pain, but in acting wisely to alleviate it. To act wisely, I first had to protect my own emotional sovereignty. The solution is not to become cold, but to make a crucial philosophical distinction, a practical habit. The next time a person comes to you with an overwhelming emotional problem, pause and mentally state, "I observe their pain. I do not absorb their pain." This intellectual separation is the first step in reclaiming your rational center. Reflective question: how often in the past week did you compromise your own peace or schedule, not out of rational duty, but because you were overwhelmed by another person's strong emotional display? The modern lexicon often conflates two profoundly different states, empathy and compassion. The Stoics, with their rigorous focus on logic, were clear on the distinction, and your mastery of this difference is the key to an iron mind. Empathy, in this context of emotional mirroring, is the act of internalizing another person's suffering. When they are angry, you become agitated. When they are anxious, you become stressed. Result: you are psychologically drained, you lose your capacity for objective reason, and you are rendered incapable of wise action because you are now part of the problem. This is a pathological response because it forces your inner state to be conditional on an external, chaotic force. Compassion, on the other hand, is the act of understanding another's suffering from a position of rational detachment and then taking wise, controlled action. Result: you see their suffering clearly. You acknowledge the objective facts of their distress, but you maintain your inner peace and clarity. This allows you to deploy the virtues: justice, courage, and practical wisdom. Why Stoics chose compassion over empathy? The Stoic goal is to remain a rational agent, to always apply reason to life's challenges. If you allow yourself to be infected by the irrational fear or anger of others, you cannot help them. You are now merely two people suffering instead of one rational mind providing clear assistance. Seneca explicitly criticized pity for leading to the same irrationality as the one being pitied. The greatest kindness you can show a person in a storm is to remain anchored yourself. I realized I was failing my mentees when I felt their anxiety. When I felt it, I stopped giving them the hard, truthful advice they needed and started giving them feel-good comfort. The shift to strategic compassion meant I could look at their fear and say, "I see why you are afraid, but your fear is irrational, and here's the logical path forward." I did not share the fear, but I shared the solution. That's the difference between draining emotionality and empowering assistance. A practical habit. When you are confronted with emotional distress, mentally shift your language from feeling to action. Replace, "I feel so sad for them," with, "I must rationally determine the best course of action to support their progress." Reflective question. When you attempt to help someone, are you motivated by a desperate desire to end the uncomfortable emotion you are absorbing, or by a calm, principled intention to provide the most effective, long-term solution? The first major warning sign that you have fallen into the empathy trap is emotional contagion, the instantaneous, subconscious absorption of another person's negativity. This is the energy vampire dynamic. The level 1 empathetic man acts as an open electrical socket, absorbing all the emotional charge of his environment. Think of the person in your life who, 10 minutes into a conversation, leaves you feeling inexplicably drained, anxious, or irritable. They didn't verbally attack you, they simply transferred their state to you. Their lack of discipline in managing their own chaos becomes your burden. When you lose your own emotional center, you are no longer making decisions from a place of rational clarity. You are reacting to an external, borrowed mood. This is a profound violation of the dichotomy of control. You have surrendered your most sacred internal possession to an external, uncontrollable force. This absorption is psychologically dangerous because it forces you into a state of psychological camouflage. You start reflecting the mood of the room or the individual, losing the ability to project your own principled, steady character. Marcus Aurelius spoke of the need to maintain your inner citadel, a mental fortress that no external assault can breach. When you willingly absorb emotional contagion, you are leaving the gates of that citadel wide open and inviting the chaos in. Your true peace resides in your inviolable self-command. When you allow your inner temperature to be set by the volatile mood swings of others, you are failing your primary duty to your own character. A practical habit. Practice the emotional shielding visualization. Before entering a high-stress environment, visualize a protective, clear boundary around your mental space. Commit to viewing all emotional displays as sound waves or light waves. They are energy you observe, but not substance you ingest. Reflective question. Think of the last time you felt drained after a conversation. Did that feeling come from the work you had to do, or the emotion you had to endure, absorb during the interaction? The level 1 empathetic man frequently falls into the savior complex, the compulsive need to take responsibility for and solve everyone else's problems. This appears virtuous, but it is deeply damaging to both parties. The savior complex is often an egoic defense mechanism. By focusing intensely on fixing the external problems of others, the individual avoids confronting the messy, difficult, and controllable problems in his own life. If I'm busy saving the world, I don't have to face my own lack of discipline or my own unfulfilled mission. This is a dangerous misapplication of energy. Your primary mission is to live a virtuous life and fulfill your duties. Deploying all your resources to fix others' broken systems is a guaranteed path to depletion. Furthermore, the savior complex enables weakness. By rushing in to solve problems that others are capable of solving themselves, you prevent them from developing their own courage and practical wisdom. You steal their opportunity for growth. The Stoic principle of justice requires you to treat others as rational, capable adults. Stepping in to solve their problems is treating them as incompetent children. The most compassionate thing you can do for developing character is to allow them to experience the natural consequences of their choices, offering support and perspective, but never removing the essential burden of responsibility. The ultimate sacrifice of the savior complex is the loss of your own mission. Your life has a primary purpose, to live virtuously and to apply your unique talents to the world. When you continuously sacrifice this primary mission for the momentary comfort or temporary fix of others, you forfeit your true potential and build immense internal resentment. I learned that the most difficult but most virtuous act of leadership is to allow a person to struggle, offering only the philosophical tools for them to overcome the obstacle themselves. If I fixed their problems, I got an easy moment of validation. If they fixed their own problem with my guidance, they gained a piece of their own iron mind. The former served my ego, the latter served their growth. A practical habit. When faced with a request for help, implement the tool versus task audit. Ask, am I being asked to give them a tool or perform a task? Commit to giving tools and refusing to perform the task unless it is a non-negotiable duty. Reflective question. How much of your current emotional fatigue is the result of attempting to fix problems that were never, by right or duty, yours to solve? Excessive empathy is the enemy of healthy boundaries. When you are emotionally mirroring another person's distress, the impulse to alleviate their pain immediately overrides your rational commitment to your own principles and time. This leads to boundary erosion. The fear of causing another person discomfort or emotional pain forces you to say yes to requests that violate your time, your finances, or your ethical standards. The resentment that builds from this continuous self-sacrifice is the dark side of empathy. You secretly blame the person you helped for the consequence of your own failure to assert a rational boundary. This turns what began as an act of kindness into a source of internal corruption. A boundary is a rational statement of personal policy. It is a commitment to your own virtues and priorities. When you discard your boundary because you feel sorry for someone, you are prioritizing their feelings over your values. The Stoic must always choose the virtuous action. Justice requires fairness to yourself as well as others. Temperance requires rational control over your commitments. If saying yes compromises your integrity or your capacity to fulfill a higher duty, the answer must rationally be no, regardless of the emotional discomfort it causes the other party. Resentment is the emotional debt collected when you allow someone to violate your boundaries. It is a failure of courage in the moment of confrontation that leads to a long-term rot in your character. You are responsible for setting and enforcing the boundary. The other person is responsible for their reaction to it. Do not confuse the two. I spent years saying yes to every desperate request from associates, fearing the drama of their disappointment. The resentment I carried was a heavy, secret burden. The key was realizing that my yes was not a compassionate act. It was an act of cowardice. A retreat from the small, necessary discomfort of a firm. Nome practical habit. The next time you are faced with a demand that violates a principle or boundary, practice the 48-hour deferral. Respond, that's a major commitment. I need 48 hours to check my schedule resources and give you a proper answer. This pause breaks the emotional urgency and allows you to apply practical wisdom before reacting to the feeling of distress. Reflective question. What one boundary are you consistently allowing to be eroded? And how has your fear of their emotional reaction created a deep, festering resentment within you? The goal is not to become cold or detached, but to become rationally effective. The Stoic alternative to draining empathy is strategic compassion. Strategic compassion is the active deployment of your rational self to serve the objective good of others, while rigorously maintaining the integrity of your own inner state. You maintain your anchor by applying the dichotomy of control. Their suffering, their feelings, and their reaction to your help are all external and uncontrollable. Your clarity, your advice, and your actions are all internal and controllable. You can speak to them with warmth and sincerity, but you must keep your mind focused on the facts of the situation, the principles at stake, and the virtuous path forward. This allows you to serve as a stable light in their storm, rather than a second sinking ship. Your inner citadel is the most valuable thing you possess. It is the source of your reason and your capacity to help. If you allow it to be overrun by the emotional chaos of others, you become useless. The guardrail. When helping, define your role clearly. My job is to provide perspective and tools. I am not responsible for the outcome or your emotional journey. The recharge. Commit to rigorous disengagement when the duty is done. You must protect your sleep, your exercise, and your reflection time to ensure the source of your compassion remains full and clear. Strategic compassion includes the courage to know when to walk away. You must audit a relationship based on the principle of virtue. The audit. Is this person using your help to build their own competence and responsibility, or are they using your empathy to offload their chaos and enable their own weakness? The exit. If the relationship consistently drains your capacity for rational action, provokes you to vice versa, and enables their dependency, then the virtuous action is the strategic exit. You are not abandoning them, you are refusing to sacrifice your virtue to their sustained dysfunction. A practical habit. When someone presents a problem, mentally structure your response into 3 parts. 1. Acknowledge the fact, not the feeling. 2. Apply a Stoic principle. 3. Assign an action. This structure forces you to bypass the emotional response. Reflective question. Is your current engagement with a challenging person a constructive relationship aimed at virtue, or a mutual emotional dependency that benefits neither of your characters? The shift from draining empathy to strategic compassion requires rigorous daily practices to build the necessary mental boundaries. Here are 5 daily habits to forge a compassionate yet unshakable mind. 1. Morning emotional inoculation. Before engaging the world, spend 2 minutes affirming your emotional sovereignty. Say, I will observe the feelings of others today, but my inner peace is commanded by my reason, and it is non-negotiable. This sets the daily policy. 2. The 10-second compassion. Pause. When an emotional appeal or difficult request is made, impose a 10-second silence. Use this pause to physically observe the sensation of the emotion without reacting. This creates the space to switch from feeling to reason. 3. The boundary script. Prescript your rational no for common violations. Write down 3 simple, firm phrases you can deploy. This replaces panicked reaction with prepared principle. 4. The daily responsibility audit. In your evening journal, track your energy. Ask, where did I expend energy today trying to fix a problem that was not mine, and where did I compromise my values to avoid social discomfort? This highlights the leaks in your boundaries. 5. The virtue-based contribution. Commit to 1 small act of strategic compassion daily that requires courage or justice. This is the Stoic way. It is not about being heartless, it is about being useful. You cannot be useful if you are broken. Defend your peace, embrace your reason, and deploy your compassion strategically. The world does not need another emotional sponge. It needs a steady, rational mind capable of wise action. Choose to be that mind. Would you like me to draft a specific boundary script for a common scenario, such as dealing with a coworker who constantly dumps their emotional baggage?